In 2005, Christopher Nolan took Batman back to the beginning with Batman Begins. He started again, he revamped a franchise. And a year later, Bond followed suit. It was a good idea, I think. Go back to the beginning, start from scratch, get a clean slate, and see where we can go from there. Who do you get as a director to kickstart that new kind of Bond take? Why, Martin Campbell, of course. He revamped Bond once before with Goldeneye to great effect, it must be said. So bring him back and let him do it again. And it must be said, he does an astounding job. Casino Royale is undoubtedly one of the best Bond films. Now, whether it's better than Skyfall, it remains to be seen. Again, I keep saying we'll get there when we get there. But certainly up to this point, wow, what a film. Just across the board, let's just get into it. Opening sequence. So we have a much quieter kind of opening sequence. It basically shows us Bond becoming a 00, getting his first 2 kills. It's much darker, it's much grittier than we're used to seeing. But it right off the bat tells us that this is going to be a film that is much more about character, the character of Bond, getting under his skin, seeing what makes this guy tick, seeing who he is, and introducing Craig to us, obviously, as the new Bond. So there's no big stunts, no big over-the-top stunt. There is a fight sequence that's very well handled, kind of has that Bourne vibe. I do believe they got the choreographer from Bourne in for these, for the fight sequences. It shows, it's great, it's a real good fight sequence, very kinetic, very kind of brutal, representative of the new direction we're going in with Bond. Someone who's down and dirty and really rough. It's quite a short opening sequence as well that brings us into the title song, which for my money is possibly my favourite. Chris Cornell does the opening title song, the theme song, main theme song for this. I really like it. It's one of my favourites. I know not everybody's quite on board with it, but I like Chris Cornell anyway as an artist. Rest in peace. I love this song. I remember when I worked in the cinema at the time this film was playing, and I'd always come in to one of the screens when it was playing just to listen to it. And I like the way that the composer uses the theme from it. There's elements of this theme song that kind of littered throughout the score of the film throughout. So it's a really good theme song. It gets me ramped up for the film that we're about to watch. And I also love the design of the opening credits with the playing cards and Bond weaving in and out of it, and kind of we see him kind of fighting like shadow puppets in many respects, but with playing cards. That motif kind of worked in, because obviously this being Casino Royale, it is adapting the first story that Fleming wrote, which was essentially just Bond playing a card game. How do you make a film out of that? How do you make it tense and exciting? I gotta say, they do a really good job. But before we get to the card game, we have another kind of almost what you'd expect to be the opening sequence that comes just after the credits, in which Bond kind of hunts down this assassin, a bomb maker, hunts him down on foot, climbing up all manner of constructions on a building site, and just really doing everything to go after this guy who's getting into a bit of free running. It's a brilliant action sequence, an amazing foot chase, really great stun work. Daniel Craig doing some really good stuff in there as well. It's cracking, and seeing Bond just not give a toss and kind of just go straight into an embassy, after his prey. He doesn't back off, even though it's an embassy. He's like, no, I'm going in there and I'm going to get him and I'm going to bring him out. And it's just, it's really great. Like I say, it makes Bond an absolute badass right from the get-go. Craig kind of setting out his stall for all the naysayers, and there were a lot of naysayers before this film came out, it must be said. People ridiculously harping on about a blonde Bond not being the way to go. Oh, how far we've come. But yeah, Craig just blitzing it, absolutely blitzing it. So yeah, really great opening action set piece. And then we go from there with Bond kind of having a bit of a thing with M when he breaks into her apartment. And we, yeah, right off the bat, their relationship is much more kind of tension filled here. I think there's a lot more bubbling under the surface. Obviously these films, the Craig era, is going to make much more of that surrogate mother relationship, which we touched on in quite a big way in The World Is Not Enough. But yeah, definitely it is one of the strengths, I think, of the Craig era Bond films, and I think they do play it very well in this film. You kind of get the sense here that Bond is the guy that M has personally plucked, and he's kind of grooming to be what I guess she can see the potential there. If he can just axe some of his more negative traits, kind of get his ego in check, she recognises the kind of agent that he could become. So yeah, it's interesting seeing that relationship kind of develop over the course of the film, and just how Bond is this almost like an upstart child who is who also has something to prove to his surrogate mother, that he can do the job. Mads Mikkelsen plays Le Chiffre, who is the main villain of this film, although we get the sense throughout this film from many quarters that he isn't the overall main villain. Like right off the bat, we know there's a bigger organisation that he is working for, and certainly by the time we get to the end of the film, we come to realise that he really is a small fish in a much bigger sea of villainy that is out there, that is going on. Obviously, they were trying to work their way up to the Spectre organisation. They were struggling with rights around the time of this, so they couldn't reveal that. And I know in the next film they kind of label it Quantum, but yeah, it's all moving towards that, that bigger puzzle piece, and I think they do a very good job of building that intrigue of what else might be out there, of giving us a world that is bigger than just the one film that we're in right now. Usually with Bond films, you get your story, you move on, you get something different. Here, there's definitely an attempt to put pieces into play that will obviously become much bigger pieces in later films, and I like that. World building is what they're doing. I like Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre. I think he's very good. I mean, he's a very good actor, Mikkelsen is anyway. He brings a lot of gravitas to that role. You get that. There's a particular scene towards the end when he's swinging that thing and hitting Bond in the balls, and it's just as a man, it makes you kind of cross your legs. It's it's an entertaining sequence. I also think Daniel Craig in that sequence is absolutely brilliant. Just his comebacks that he gives, you can tell the dude is in pain, but he's pushing past it. And I think his performance just overall in this film is great, but particularly in that sequence is really good. Very kind of nail-biting stuff. And you see the desperation as well in Le Chiffre during that scene, because he's literally fighting for his life. He's torturing Bond because he needs the money. He's desperate for it because he's hanging by a thread. He knows if he doesn't get the money, he's a dead man. So yeah, it's nice to see the desperation in a villain like that. To see that actually he's playing as much of a survival game as Bond is. But obviously the main confrontation between these two characters really plays out in a card game. It's a game of wits that takes up the largest chunk of the film when they go to Casino Royale, and essentially Bond has to win a card game in order to make Le Chiffre broke and desperate to turn to MI6, and then they can broker deals with him, get information from him, and broker some deals. Obviously he wants to win the money so that he can pay off his debtors and then get back to square one. But obviously if he does that is then money that is going to fund terrorism. So there is multiple reasons why Bond really needs to win this high-stakes card game. It really is a high-stakes card game. It's not just about defeating the villain. It's about making sure that the money that is at stake doesn't go towards funding terrorism. So I love the way they put all these different stakes into play that then makes this card game such a tense kind of, battle of wits. The tension that comes out of this card game is also risen much further by the fact that they intersperse the breaks in the card game with other stuff that's going on. So on Le Chiffre's side, we see that people are now already after him. They want their money. They're threatening him. They threaten his girlfriend. So we see how much he's really invested in this card game. And then with Bond, we get this sequence in which he takes on these villains that have gone after Le Chiffre in a rather brutal staircase fight sequence. Really great fight sequence, it must be said. Again, high energy stuff, but also with an attempt at poisoning Bond. So Le Chiffre, his girlfriend, kind of poisons Bond's drink, which leads to this, again, another tense sequence in which Bond is having to hook up this gadget that is basically a little one of those kind of machines they use in hospital, defibrillators, to bring himself back. But he doesn't quite get there, and he kind of he dies. But thankfully, Vesper Lynd shows up and brings him back around, which brings me to the character of Vesper Lynd. Like I say, just the use of her throughout this film is really great. I think she's an equal to Bond, certainly from an intellectual standpoint. When they first meet, they size each other up pretty well in a rather amusing scene. I say amusing, it's a good fun scene to watch. Watching these two spar, their verbal sparring throughout, is always really good. There's this kind of almost like a game of one-upmanship. Well, it's about independence, showing that these two are really independent characters. Vesper is not just going to be your bog standard Bond girl. She's not going to just hop into bed with Bond because he flexes his muscles or whatever. No, she's an intellectual woman. She's a strong, independent woman in her own right, and you're really going to have to do something to win her over. She's also very good at helping Bond out when he needs it. As I say, the aforementioned showing up and fixing the defibrillator and bringing him back around. So yeah, she proves herself to be a valuable ally. Going back to the fight sequence, we get to see a real moment of vulnerability with her that is very believable. Kind of being an accessory to the murder, really, of this guy. Bond gets into a fight with the villain. Admittedly, this guy is trying to kill Bond in his self-defense, and yeah, she has to help Bond. The guy's going for the gun, and she's taking it off him. And that really, it has an emotional punch. It has weight. I remember a friend of mine actually years ago when this 2006 when this film came out. He was a big Bond fan. He'd always watched the Bond films, and he wasn't a particular fan of this. He didn't like it. He thought it had gone too dark, too gritty, too sickening. I think in the action stakes. I think too real. I guess is the way I describe it. But I much more appreciate that. I think that the violence in this film has consequences, both physically and emotionally. So it has an emotional weight on Vesper Lynd. We see the ramifications that such actions have on a person. Seeing somebody killed, it does something. So when we see her in a shower, kind of almost trying to wash the blood away, both literally and metaphorically, and Bond has to go in and kind of comfort her. It's a real poignant moment, and it's a nice moment shared between these two characters that really brings them closer together, that unites them. They've both gone through this kind of horrible experience and come out the other side changed. I just think it's really well handled across the board, from the character stuff, you know, like I say, that the interplay between Vesper and Bond, and the way it makes us care for Vesper, the way that Bond comes to care for her, because Vesper is a very important figure in Bond's life going forward. You know, she's not just a typical Bond girl. She's the one that he falls in love with, that he would give it all up for, and yeah, obviously she kind of betrays that trust, but for good reasons. It's a final act from her that proves her love to him, but he doesn't see that until it's too late, obviously, when she's given her life. And it's again, it's a touching moment. It's quite a harsh moment as well, you know, when we have Bond kind of saying the bitch is dead, and it's only after he's said that M kind of, yeah, tells him that actually when you look at it, she probably did this for you. So it's a bittersweet moment, but it's a moment that is defining for the character of Bond. It's what gives him ultimately that coldness that we're going to see him have towards women in the future. That thing where he's not going to allow himself to get too close. It's that stepping stone to becoming the man that we know him to be from the previous Bond films. So yeah, it's very character driven. It's really good stuff. I like all the characters in this. There's no one, usually in a Bond film, there's a character that stands out as someone that kind of is annoying or is too over the top or whatever. Everyone in this is played really beautifully. I think Craig, just from this one film, quite frankly, becomes my best Bond. He's much more realistic. I totally buy him as this character, as someone who's been plucked, you know, an orphan, who's got issues, who's basically right to be tailored for an assassin, and he's got the physicality that Bond should have, you know, a character like this. I like the wit that Craig brings to it, the sarcasm, the ego as well. So yeah, all just top-notch stuff, really good stuff. I can't fault anything, to be honest. The score for the film is brilliant, as I said, the way it weaves in the theme, elements from the theme. This film has my favourite Felix Leiter as well in Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright's one of those guys who, I get the sense he's a bit of a strange kind of chap in real life. He has played some strange characters, people who are a bit off-kilter. But I like what he brings here for Felix Leiter. Very dry, very low, very kind of considered. And yeah, I like that he kind of recognises the talent in Bond and offers to buy him back in. Kind of has that faith in him. It instantly builds that relationship between the two, so that obviously when he resurfaces in future films, you're gonna buy into that trust that they have, that relationship that they have. Obviously, Felix Leiter being a real good friend of Bond's in previous movies. So yeah, you can see where that starts here, the trust that Felix places in Bond, and the trust that earns from Bond in return. I literally don't have any faults for this film. I think just by virtue of it being a Bond film, I probably would have graded it lower in years gone by. But watching it again this time around and having to admit that literally I have no complaints, this is about as perfect as a Bond film gets. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. Absolutely brilliant. This is the one to beat. But what about you? What do you think about Casino Royale? What do you think about Craig in his initial outing as Bond? Did he blow you away, or did you feel like he had to prove himself a bit more before you could truly comment? For me, like I say right off the bat, I just thought that is Bond. That is the Bond I want to see. But yeah, what about you? Comment below and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.